Boom. Awesome. So today what we're really going to get into is a request from Felix, and I really appreciated it from him. And it's an update on automated rules. Now, automated rules are something that I have been using for years and years and years. And I was really stoked a couple of years ago when they updated them, because it used to be in the old Power Editor UI, because it was like Madden, like they hadn't updated it in 10 years. But I really, really like automated rules. And the idea behind automated rules is basically you can program Facebook to understand your business objectives and to accomplish repeatable programmable tasks. Basically, it's an entry-level employee that you never have to pay, that never makes a mistake and works 24 hours a day. So the issue here is, what do we do now that our attribution and optimization windows can no longer be separate? Like we used to have a one-day click attribution, but we could optimize to a 7-day, or vice versa, or now that we have delayed reporting in the attribution and all of these other things, how do we now apply previous automated rules to this new experience? So the first thing I wanted to cover here was that, number one, we need to work more on trend versus intraday. And what I mean by this is, we used to legitimately say during the day, if you were doing this well by 12, this well by 2, this well by 6, take a desired action. We're now not in a place where we can really do that. And to be completely honest, that's probably a good thing for us, because it forces us to be less reliant on hacking the machine and more reliant on giving the machine really good choices. And while it makes us less agile in an automated fashion to maximize potential on a good day, it also prevents us from getting in our own way by trying to take premature action on bad days, where what I see a lot is people saying, well, if I haven't made my money back by noon, I'm just going to turn this off. And what ends up happening is you end up training the algorithm to deliver only in the days where your spend is active. Because if you turn your ad set off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon every single day, well, Facebook's going to start to see that, and it's going to try to start to spend where it has more data, because of the fact that now it sees way more data up to 2 p.m. That's going to be where it understands and where it's going to try to pace to. It's also going to be after 2 p.m. really dumb at understanding how to accomplish your goals. So you're training the machine to be really good in the morning and really bad in the afternoon. And the idea here is basically what we used to do is basically overpace. So if we want to spend $500 today, we might set our campaign to $700 or $800 and say, by the time you're at $400, if you're not good enough, just turn it off, save a little bit of money. And if it is good, we let it keep going. And I loved doing that. It was actually a fantastic way of scaling, because you were able to basically set up the scale that you wanted on good days to continue to invest. The problem is that with the delay we have and with the lower amount of data, which Facebook is working on and will come back, we can't make the same intraday day trading moves that we used to. Now, like I said, I really like that stuff because it would really help me take advantage of good days, but it also really forced me to kind of feel really smart and maximize, try to get in the way of the machine seeing large, consistent sets of data. And I did a big test with this. And what I can say is, historically speaking, what I saw was allowing the machine to spend 24 hours a day and managing to long-term trend data generally gave you a far more stable result. Now, stability also inherently means less volatility, which means you do sacrifice the massive upside on good days, but it also meant that you had far less really bad days. Basically, the hyperbole of bad day, good day, bad day, good day, this kind of thing leveled out. And because you're able to see more data and because it was more consistent, you're able to make better decisions. So this leveling off also kind of works its way up. So you get a little bit better and a little bit better. So the lack of the instability and volatility, which would allow us to massively scale quickly, also prevents us from getting in our own way of raising the mean, just making the average day a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. The concept, Kaizen, 1% better every day or something. So what this really means is in our automated rules, when it comes to budget optimization or when it comes to turning ads on and off and stuff like that, we have to rely more on trend data. And the logic that I've really been using here primarily over the last 6 months is what we used to do for lower budget efforts, where the intraday worked if we were getting 20, 30, 50 conversions in a day. But if you were only getting 10 or 15, you might not have enough data to really make that decision. So you would say, okay, over the last 3 days, what was going on? Or over the last 7 days? Was something good enough or bad enough? Because you weren't able to take action on one day. And really now, what I find is working, and I've been running in a fair amount of places, and I really enjoy, is relying on that, what we used to call like what we used to call very small budget strategy, taking that to the macro and basically saying, if your performance over the last 3 days or 7 days is desirable, let me give you more opportunities to succeed. Or if you're less than desirable, let me give you less opportunity to be a liability. And really what this means is an application in active ads is, hold on a second, I'm writing this down, is we used to say, hey, if your ad's not good enough today, turn it off, go home, come back tomorrow. Now what we can say is that still holds true. And we can reactivate the ads at midnight. But if you're not good enough over the last 7 days, say your average CPA is 10% over your target or over the average, like say I'm trying to get $50, I'm coming in at a 48 and you're a 53. Over the last 7 days, you're at a 53. And you've spent a decent amount of money. So I have trust in you. You've had a decent amount of volume and you show me for whatever reason right now, you're not good. In these cases, we can say, yeah, you can reactivate at midnight, but at any time during the day, so we have that midnight reactivation, midnight turn all the active ads on rule. But we can also say is over the last 7 days, and I like 7 days more than 3. It depends on volume, but 7 days is a really long life cycle, really stable situation. If over the last 7 days, your performance has not been good enough, I'm going to turn you off. If level of investment, say if you've spent at least $500, but your CPA is at a 55, for instance, for this purpose of this conversation, then you're not good enough and I'm going to turn you off. Now, what happens is that means the available options are going to be the ones that have spent that much money and are doing good, or the ones that haven't seen that much investment yet. So we don't know whether or not they're good. And what this does is it cycles the inventory of available ads. So if you have a bad ad, maybe an ad has 2 or 3 really bad days. And okay, you turn it off and the ones that were doing really well see more of the spend. What it also means is that ad that got turned off by day 2 or 3 of being turned off all the time, because it's been off, it doesn't have enough of investment to trip that rule. It means that it's turned back on because maybe we only spent $200 in the last week on it because it was off for 3 or 4 of those days, which means now it gets to come back. And based on that, Facebook might decide to spend on it again, or it might decide to just not really ever invest in that piece again. And if we see that, we can just say, hey, look, you're done. We appreciate the work you've done here. We've got better options. Thank you very much. You, for lack of a better word, you fire your employee. When you can cycle through like this, what you're doing is you're allowing performance based around a long trend. And the reason I like 7 days versus 3 or 1 is because it doesn't let one really good day or one really bad day terribly cloud our automation. It also says that Facebook will potentially obfuscate data for 2 or 3 days, right? We've seen that 48 hour, 72 hour, there's a maturation to the data set, right? And especially if you're running like a 7-day click, 1-day view, which I think you should be doing if you can't afford to do a 1-day click, then it's saying that like you've got a week to make that conversion. And over that week, if you're not getting conversions, if it's not working out for you, if you're not the right choice right now, we're going to turn you off. We're going to give other things that are doing well priority. And hey, look, after that cooling off period, we're going to let you come back in. Now, what this also does that's really helpful is it addresses one of the concerns around ad fatigue. And it addresses concerns around, it also addresses concerns around seasonality and ultimately, do these ads work or not? Because some ads will work for a great period of time, but then that sales pitch no longer really appeals. Like I've seen, for instance, Black Friday ads work until like January. And people are like, well, why is this Black Friday ad out there? I'm like, because it's making us a ton of money. We're just going to keep running it. Other examples are, I had a client that was doing grills. The ad that worked in the spring about getting a grill didn't work at the end of the fall. And it wasn't ad fatigue. It's that the creative literally just didn't speak to, we weren't overcoming the objections of the client because they had made their decision. It was a seasonal brand. The ad was no longer responding. And so what we saw was towards the end of August or towards the end of July, that ad stopped work. That ad started to get turned off. By the end of August, that ad was basically getting turned back on, spent enough to get turned off again, and then died. And what we found was this thing never was able to get enough money to even get turned off anymore. Because after the 3rd or 4th time that this thing happened, this cycle of turning it off because it spent enough and the performance was bad, and then it gets turned back on, eventually Facebook just stopped spending on it. Now, over that time, we had also reintroduced other really good ideas and new ads. And occasionally this ad was doing well enough, but what we found was the system basically decided you're not good. I've got better choices. And we ended up just turning it off because it never got enough investment, even without rules, to be utilized. And this shows a really great point to how automated rules help. Is that automated rules can allow you to take actions to help train the algorithm to understand what your business objectives are. So in this case, we could say, hey, this ad wasn't good enough because of this trend analysis, turn it off. Well, what happened when we do that 2, 3, 4 times is Facebook just stopped spending there. Now, it's not because Facebook sees we're turning the ad off. It's because the amount of data Facebook sees in other options is greater. So the amount of confidence Facebook has in delivering their desired user experience is greater. So the investment Facebook is going to make in those choices is greater. So because we've kept other options on that happen to be more desirable to us, and we've turned those options off that are less desirable, even when we turn on the less desirable choices, Facebook doesn't invest in there because there's less data, there's less confidence in the machine learning to even go there. So when using this trend analysis over time with automated rules, we're really, really able to let this cycle through our active ads and our control campaigns. So it's not just, hey, we're bringing something in from testing, but it's also that what we do have in control is cycling through our best available choices. So now, while we're cycling, maybe we have 5 ads in our control campaign, maybe the only top 3 or 4 are actually even getting spend, and that worst one is struggling to even see the light of day. So Facebook's kind of optimizing it out anyway. And ultimately what happens is this means we're scaling our budget to our best available choices, because if they weren't good, then they wouldn't be active. And because they are good, they're getting more spend. And because that scale isn't happening because we're pushing the spend, it's happening because Facebook is choosing where to invest. And because we're against a broad audience, we're able to handle, more and more risk, more and more investment in those fewer places. And ultimately what happens when you spend more money in places that are more efficient is your average gets better. So this is a really great way that I'm kind of switching to the trend analysis version of these automated rules, which again says, instead of the intraday rule, let's go for 3 days or a week. I'm a big fan of the 7-day. Honestly, about 90% of the rules that I use are at the 7-day mark now. I just found that it's the most stable data set that also allows me to be actionable, right? Like 7 days, if I'm making a bad decision and on a 7-day moving average, after day 2 or day 3 of me making that decision, action is going to be taken. So it's really solid for me. Now, we're talking about turning ads on and off, but another place that this works really well is in performance gate scaling. If your control campaign or your creative testing campaign, let's just go for the control campaign. If your control campaign, say you're in a spot of like, every dollar I can spend at a CPA under 50 is a good dollar spent, and I could invest more money. I don't have a set daily budget. If your control campaign is consistently bringing you a $50, it stays there. Now, performance gate scaling would say, if you're coming in at, say, a $45, increase the spend. Now, what I've been doing a lot is with performance gate scaling is making this a Monday, Wednesday, Friday adjustment based on the last 7 days of data. Now, what this really means is, if over the last 7 days you're coming in at, say, a 45, push the spend by like 5%. Now, it's not a huge number, but 5%, 2 or 3 times a week for like a month is a massive change. And we can also do the inverse of saying, hey, if you're above, say you're at a 55 and our target's a 50, and the last 7-day moving average is that high, we need to pull back on your budget for 2 reasons. 1, we don't want to invest where we're losing money. And 2, because lowering our budget should give us a better cost per acquisition, because our bid in the ecosystem is our budget and our estimated action rate. If our cost is too high, we reduce the budget, and then all of a sudden our ads have to do less work, and then they're going to be more efficient. So what we're really getting to here is this using long-term trend analysis in an automated fashion to address our investment level. Now, where this is awesome, especially, is in creative testing. Because once we get stuff from our dynamic creatives into our like standalone post ID ad sets, and those things take off, or maybe even our dynamic creatives do really well. Let's say our target is $50 and these things are coming in at like 38. We can increase our investment. And there's nothing to say that maybe it's coming in at 38 for like a week or 2. We could adjust the allowable for our control campaign from 50 to 45. And maybe that means that the control campaign is going to come down. But if it's coming down an overall spend, but that money instead is being spent on the creative testing as it's going up, but that creative testing is outperforming the control campaign, which is what we want to have happen, then we're in a really good place. And I've absolutely seen the control campaign be 90% of the budget and the testing campaign be 10%. And we get some awesome creative tests where things are doing really, really well. And that creative test becomes 40, 50, 60, 70% of spend because it's doing so Good. There's a point where it stops being effective enough. And because you're making small changes several times a week on an automated basis, so it's not actually you doing it, because your employee is taking action on the business rules that you've decided and you've automated, then we're taking very low risks at increasing that investment. And if we're getting, say we go from 10% of our budget a day is at 38, when we get to 40, 50% of our budget, we're at a 43, $45 CPA, but our control is still coming in at a 48. That control is still bad for us, relatively speaking. Now, both are desirable, but especially if we have a set budget, we would rather be allocating towards that test. And there will be a point in time where that test starts to spend so much money that the budget and estimated action rate equation becomes less than desirable for us. And where that really looks like is when that testing campaign becomes less efficient than the control campaign, even if it's at $48 and our control is at a 47, they're both less than 50, but now it's a less desirable investment. And when we hit that point, we can stop ramping up the budget. And if we don't make moves, maybe it'll take a few days, and then all of a sudden Facebook gets better at spending that much money and the cost comes back down, so the investment goes up. Or maybe we kind of figured out this is the ceiling. This is what this is the amount of work this employee can do on a daily basis. That's really good information. Now, when that happens in our creative testing, what ultimately occurs is those winning ideas tend to dominate the spend, and we get to the point where we can't test other dynamic creative ideas anymore because 80, 70, 80, 90% of the spend is going to those post IDs. And then we need to take those post IDs out of creative testing, move them over to control. And now the control is probably going to get a lot better, and our creative testing is going to get a lot worse. And because we have the automated rules based on trend analysis, adjusting the budgets based on CPA, immediately, or not immediately, but what's going to happen is, number one, your creative testing campaign is going to do worse. Because it's doing worse, that budget's going to come down on an automated level. And because our control campaign has new good ideas, and we've been cycling through the bad ideas, getting them out, this thing's going to get a lower CPA. So the budget on it's going to start to go back up. So there's this balance. But if you keep doing this over and over again, maybe for instance, the control campaign is spending 1,000 a day and your test campaign is at 100. As you do this, the third, the fourth, the fifth time, maybe your control campaign is spending $2,500 a day and your test campaign is spending $300, $400 a day. Because as you get better ads, you're going to be able to spend more money because of that budget and estimated action rate. You're going to have more headroom, and you're going to be able to scale your business because you're getting revenue in that allows you to push the spend. Because the way that we scale an account is having a great enough efficiency to give us a headroom on our target cost. And then we can use some of that profit margin to reinvest in the growth of our business. So we can use top line growth to grow the bottom line of the business, which is what you should be doing. If staying profitable to scale is your business model, which isn't necessarily it. So I take that back. Maybe it's not what you should be doing, but it's how we're talking on this conversation. Now, basically what happens is we're going to be able to scale the business altogether. And when you cycle this over and over again, you might not end up moving your average cost. But if your average cost doesn't move, but you're able to scale the volume of spend, you're going to be able to scale the volume of results. The other side of this is maybe your overall spend doesn't really change. Like you are managing it manually to say, I can't afford to spend more than 500, 2,000, 5,000 a day, whatever that number is on this account. Maybe I have a set budget from my client or whatever. Or your credit card company says you can't spend more than this in a month, whatever it is. Cycling through this is going to lower your average cost per acquisition, which will give you more volume of customers that are going to be high. It's going to give you a higher volume of higher quality traffic and more purchases. Now, in my experience, I've done this at massive scale. Like I raised an account from $3,000 to $30,000 a day. Then what we did, and we were running at like a $50, $60 CPA. We spent 9 months doing this cycle. And what we ended up doing was getting that cost per acquisition from $50 to $60 a day to having some days that were less than 10, but averaging around 12 or 13 bucks. So we ended up doing there. Part of what we were able to do, because we were getting more efficient and our volume was staying the same or getting better, we were able to pull back on the spend. And as you pull back on the spend, you put more revenue in your pocket because you're not investing it in future growth, but also because you're lowering your budget, your bid goes down. So the cost, if you can get 5 sales for 50 bucks, great. If you can get 7 sales, 8 sales, 10 sales for 50 bucks, you don't have to spend as much to make the same amount of revenue. Let's be hyperbolic. Let's say you're getting 5 sales for 50 bucks, $10 a sale. Now it's like you get 10 sales for 50 bucks. You've doubled the revenue at the same level of investment. If you pull back your investment by, say, 20%, you might now only sell 8 things for that $40, but it's still 3 more than you were selling at 50. So you're making more revenue on a daily basis, and your investment is actually coming down. So you're making more revenue, and because your out-of-pocket cost is less, your profit margin is higher. And that allows you to ultimately improve your CPA because now your costs are coming down even more and more and more. So that's a way that this can actually work at scale over time. Now, I've done that several times, and generally speaking, the trend stays the same the entire time. And it's because we're leaning into how Facebook algorithm actually works. And so that's how I'm really using automated rules now outside of iOS 14, or with that in mind, but with the change of aggregated events manager and everything else, is we're no longer working on intraday, working way more on 3 and 7 day trends and just pegging business objectives. What's an allowable? And then because you're pulling your reporting, when you look into the Scrum doc, you're going to be able to see the effects of what's going on, and you might decide to take manual control. But that's, I think, the long and the short of it, trying to give as in-depth of real-world examples as I can of how we're taking the same strategy of automated rules, but instead of going off of 1 day results,
Recording in progress.
how we're going on ultimately trend analysis results to accomplish the same objective for our brands, which is establishing business rules, programming the machine to understand what those rules are, and by that basically saying, if you're not good enough, we're going to turn you off. And if you are good enough, we'll give you more investment. And then using that to ultimately accomplish larger business objectives without actually having to do work, because our machine is doing the work for us because we set up our business rules to align with our creative testing process and our business development. So that's the long and the short of it. I know that was sort of a long-winded one today, but knowing that automated rules are absolutely vital for a lot of businesses, and I highly recommend them. This is how some of the stuff that we used to do applies into the world now that we might not be able to rely on day of results as a very high confidence source of truth. So with that being said, I think I'm going to shut up now and let you guys ask some questions if you have them.
So TLDR, the intraday scaling isn't as reliable right now. You're just saying to do the historical thing on what you have in the performance gates account.
Yeah, basically that's it.
Okay.
And with that, I prefer 7 days as the highest confidence data set. And I would make small moves several times a week. What I'm primarily doing is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5% or less change. And that is introducing us. That is,
or less.
what's that? Yeah, 5% or less
I didn't say
change.
anything.
Because that prevents the system from getting too much of a shock to the
Got it.
algorithm.
That's one. You can go first. Yeah. Did Kelvin did Kelvin have a question? My bad. I've completely forgot my question.
It's okay. I'll let it come back to you. I have a question.
Okay.
Will you be updating your automated rules ebooks, or do they need to be updated? Are there any general guidelines that you would provide now that cater to following the trend versus intraday?
I will be going back and taking a look at them. I did just do an updated version of the Scrum Doc ebook. The honest truth is the only real implication here is for folks that don't have enough volume to make those intraday decisions to rely more on trend. That being said, the day of rules still work if you have enough data. If you're getting 20, 30, 50 conversions a day, the intraday rules are still good. It just means where the barrier is between allowing the intraday versus the trend, which one you have to lean on, is a bit different. We used to be able to run intraday on smaller investments because the match rate of what the system showed us was higher. But ultimately, the logic behind the rules basically stays the same.
Yeah, I guess the rules don't change. It's just when you decide to apply them, you allow more time to pass and more data before you want the rules to make a decision.
Yeah. It's basically just I think the way I tried to write the rules was absolutely like, here's the overall thinking. Here's the logic. And then the automated rules book towards the end of it says like, hey, if you don't have the budget to do all of this in one day, do it over a period of time. And basically what this means now is this can absolutely work same day. Like there are some people spending thousands of dollars a day, getting dozens and dozens of conversions. The level of noise isn't high enough for the intraday rules to not be effective. That's a double negative. Basically, they're still getting enough data to make intraday rules work. But just the average advertiser might not have that luxury in a spot where a year or two ago they did.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but it's a great question.
Looks like we lost Eric.
Well, he's coming back. I feel like he's driving through LA, so we'll see how it goes.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that, Charlie.
It's okay. I feel like, Eric, I feel like we're losing you, buddy. Yeah, I don't know.
So sorry about that. Yeah, this is all. I'm trying to.
I wonder where he's at. If he's in the hills of Los Angeles, he's doomed. I used to live in Laurel Canyon, and yeah, you couldn't even have a conversation in the living room, which was dumb. Beautiful.
I told you I went to elementary school there.
Oh, that's right.
Wonderland.
That's right.
There were coyotes there at one point in the morning, so we had to like chill out. It was definitely an interesting place.
Yeah, I used to have coyotes in my living room, in my backyard.
Toluca
Every
Lake
day.
has coyotes up there.
What's that?
You said you're in Toluca Lake, right?
I'm in Atwater.
Atwater. Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Not too familiar with the area, but
Between Los
is that right
Feliz and
by?
Glendale.
Oh, that's a nice area, man. That's a really nice area.
I mean, it's good. What can I say? I'm a happy
Hey,
guy.
Facebook ads are paying off, is what I'm gonna say.
There you go. Facebook ads did pay off. That's right.
The 75.
Well, I'm doing better than the 75 now. That's a for sure thing. Oof. All right, Eric, don't take it personal, but I am going to mute you because this isn't working out with your connection. There we go.
Turned into something nice. Hey, but Charlie, I still don't. So I guess I'll probably have to.
Yeah, Eric, go ahead and DM me and we'll take it from there. Calvin, did you have any other questions on the automated rules stuff or anything else?
I have no more questions right now on automated rules.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. We will definitely get into the automated rules when it comes to Golden Bear. I think I need to address a little bit of that so that you can know, you can have the system automatically turn things on and off or off for you when you get to a certain level. And I think I mentioned it in the lecture in the MBA program.
Right.
But I don't know that I got down to the nitty gritty of how to do that as much. So I will work on that, but in our next one-on-one, I'll definitely, that's an available option and I'll try to get it into the program before then. But either way, we will definitely make sure that that happens.
Excellent.
All right. Well, with that, I think we'll call it. This was super fun. I hope you guys are enjoying this stuff. I know that there's a lot here, but that's why you can also come back and look at any of these at any point in time. Also, I've set up some automation so that now the YouTube videos are getting automatically posted into the Facebook Disruptor article channel. Because now it's basically articles with video to explain the article. And you don't have to necessarily subscribe to the YouTube to see those videos now, but fun stuff. Anyway, I will talk to you all later and best of luck to you and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Charlie. You too.